Hey guys, and thank you for tuning back in to Art Theories. This week we're talking about Kanye West. Six reasons why he's a creative genius. Reason number one, output. This is so obvious that it can kind of get overlooked sometimes, but I think it's important to remember that since 2004, Kanye's released 12 albums. That's a lot. That's a lot of albums, and they're all pretty big albums. You know, one or two of them are quite short, especially the recent ones, but they are long. Most of them are long and dense, and everything in them, from the beginning to the middle to the end, is actually really good music. And I don't remember who came up with it, but there's a concept called the 5-album test, and basically the idea is an artist can only be considered great once they've produced 5 outstanding albums. And yeah, I think that's great. That's a really good measure of consistency as well as genius. Well, if we take that as our starting point, Kanye has doubled the 5-album test. So reason number 2, versatility and ability to innovate. So yeah, Kanye has great output, but there's a lot of artists out there who have great output. For example, Drake. Drake also releases so much music all the time. But I would like to argue that there is a difference between Kanye and Drake. People don't make these kinds of videos about Drake, and I find so many articles online or YouTube videos about how Kanye West is a genius. I'm going to bang a few screenshots here and there so you know what I'm talking about. Kanye consistently has mastered sounds, absolutely embodied a sound, gained huge commercial success every single time, and then just sort of dropped that and moved on to something new. And for me, that really proves he's a genius, because he never stuck to a formula. He wasn't the first thing he ever did was basically sample soul tracks and rap over them. That was how his first few hits came into existence. That made him millions, that made him a star. But he quite quickly got bored and moved on. And time again, he's taken creative risks, he's innovated with his sounds, and he's followed his own sense of direction. And he's received a huge amount of ridicule for that and criticism. And I think it's a sign of his artistry that he didn't just want to stick to a formula, he had to move on to new things. Genius creatives, like the best of the best, they tend to have this quality of versatility about them. They innovate. A great example would be David Bowie. He had all these different personas throughout his career, and each persona came with a different aesthetic and a different sound and a different story. You could also add Pablo Picasso to that list. He had his rose period, he had his blue period, he had political work, he had cubist work, he did portraiture, he did realism. You might add the Beatles, you might add Rihanna, you might add Miles Davis to that list. But without a doubt, Kanye West has earned his place amongst those names. Reason number 3, influence. So Kanye's immense output and his willingness to take risks has led to him becoming probably the most influential rapper, one of the most influential musicians in the world today. And there are so many examples I could give of things he's done that have influenced other musicians and have diluted into the general culture of pop music today. I'm just going to mention one because we don't have time for all of them, and that is 808 and Heartbreaks. Like I mentioned before, Kanye started his career rapping over soul samples, and by his 4th album, he just decided to do something completely different. He slowed down the beats hugely. He was using a synth, he was using auto-tune heavily. He was making this really emotionally raw music. It was kind of intellectual, it was kind of artsy. He was singing much more than he was rapping. And that was a huge creative risk to take at the time. It wasn't what people knew him for. It wasn't the type of thing that people expected from him. But he just still did it. He followed his vision. That's the music he made. And it paid off hugely. This album was released in 2008. And it has influenced an entire generation of musicians after that. Most notably, Drake. I mean, if you listen to Drake's early music, it's a really spacey, slowed out beat. He's kind of doing this half singing, half rapping thing over the top of it. And it's quite emotional in Drake's very own special way. There's actually a Kanye quote, I think it might have been used as a diss, where he says, "I made 808, so I'm everyone's father." That is literally true. Juice WRLD and Travis Scott have also cited 808s and heartbreaks as a major influence on their work. And like I said, there's loads of other examples, but I'm just going to stick to one. Reason number 4, production. Kanye started his career as a producer, and that raw skill he has for producing incredible sounds has added so much to his work. Like, he even admits himself that his voice isn't that great. Like, he makes it work, but he's able to use his production abilities to create such unique and distinct and powerful sounds that it really elevates his music and sets him apart from every other rapper in the game. And sometimes it's hard to verbalize when something is just beautiful in an abstract way, but like, every time I listen to the instrumental pivot about 2/3 of the way through Blood on the Leaves, it just sends shivers down my spine. And there's no way to really explain that other than to say it's amazing. Like, his production is unique and incredible and has done so much for his music and to elevate the importance of production in rap music in general. And a great example of this would be Donda. He has so many features on Donda, and almost every single feature is outstanding. He's able to pull such amazing performances from all these artists. And obviously the way he's done that is by creating a platform for them, by creating sounds that they can really work with. And I think that is credit to his production abilities. Reason number 5, fashion. So I watched an interview with Kanye recently on Forbes where he's talking about his fashion products, and it's just fascinating. Like, he references the Bible. Apparently there's this passage somewhere in the Bible, I'm not going to quote it word for word, but it said something along the lines of, "Do not wear a garment made of 2 types of cloth." And Kanye states that he uses this as the basis for all his trainers and all his fashion inspiration. He uses single material for all of his garments. And I think that's really interesting, as well as, like, when talking about his inspirations, he mentions Lamborghini, he mentions the anime film Akira, and like, that's so disparate, but I can see the connections when I look at those trainers, which are absolutely wild. I would love a pair of these trainers. But when you look at these trainers and you look at what he's quoting as inspiration, it's there. I can see the link. And I just love it when an artist is taking from all these different things, like something ancient like the Bible and something modern like Akira or Lamborghini, and just fusing it together. I think that there is such an artistry to that. Kanye had a really hard time being accepted into the fashion world. He went into debt trying to get his fashion off the ground. Kanye says, "It's something I've always had to fight to love." However, despite the fierce resistance he met when trying to step out of his box and enter into a new creative realm, he is widely credited with bringing streetwear into the realm of high fashion. He's also been credited with making the font Old English cool again, although that one is contentious. Some people believe it was cool and Kanye jumped on the trend. I'm going to credit it to Kanye, but feel free to do your own research on that one. Reason number 6. Haters. And I know this one might sound strange, but just bear with me. There are people out there who cannot stand this man, and they really dislike him. They really don't like his music. They think he's arrogant. They think he's tacky. They think he's rude. They dislike the things he said. And okay, I'm not going to defend him on moral grounds. He's done and said some questionable stuff. But what I find crazy is that these people, and they exist, I've met a lot of them in person, is that they can't acknowledge the fact that the man makes good music. And I find that really strange. I sort of started thinking about them in the same way that I think about anti-vaxxers or climate change deniers, people who are so entrenched in their worldview and they're so stuck in their mindset that they just cannot open their eyes and see reality or think about things in a different way. Still, I've learned to love the haters, and that might seem a bit strange, but in a way, I think that the amount of hate Kanye gets actually validates his success. If he was an average artist or a good artist, no one would care. No one would bother to hate him. It takes energy to hate someone. The point is that he's a genius, and not only is he a genius, but he's a genius who refuses to allow people to box him in and time again reinvents himself. And when you continuously step out of the box people put you in, and when you continuously are that successful, and racism might have something to do with this, but the media attacks you, you generate haters, people dislike you. You could compare this to the Impressionists. When they first started making paintings which didn't fit the salon aesthetic, they were ridiculed, they were mocked, the newspapers attacked them, and that's what happens when people produce genius, is it takes time for everyone to appreciate what you've done. Anyway, I'm going to finish with a quote from Kanye here, and it says, "When you're the absolute best, you get hated on the most." Thank you very much for tuning into Art Theories. Don't forget to like and subscribe.